Raees Khan.
BBC Radio Merseyside.
The time now, it is 7:15. Raees Khan with you this evening, keeping you company as ever till 10 o'clock. Now, did you know that the UK faces a rising allergy crisis affecting nearly 20 million people and putting themselves in a dangerous position by not carrying vital emergency information? Well, joining us now is Jatin Patel, who is Head of Operations at FGS Ingredients, a family-owned British food manufacturer who's been supplying seasonings across the UK for over 50 years. Welcome to the programme, Jatin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I guess, first of all, start off by, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about the role that you hold at FGS Ingredients.
No problem. I've worked in the food industry for over a decade now, and I currently lead operations at FGS Ingredients, a third-generation family-run business. We supply natural ingredients, particularly spices and blends, to brands and manufacturers across the UK. I've always been passionate about food safety, and we discovered a potential allergen risk in one of our products recently, and I personally led the response in challenging times, but also have a chance to improve how the industry operates too.
When it comes to allergy safety in food manufacturing, why is it such a critical issue right now?
Well, allergies are on the rise. Over 20 million people in the UK live with some form of allergy, and for many, it can be life-threatening. That's a huge number, and yet allergen risks are still underestimated in food production. A single mistake in labelling or cross-contamination can lead to a serious health emergency. That's why it's not just about ticking boxes. Food safety has to be built into the culture of every company.
I mean, you mentioned just there that you found an allergen issue in one of your own products. So that recall must have been quite difficult. How did FGS respond to that, and what changes were implemented after?
Well, it was tough, but we acted fast and took full responsibility. We withdrew the products from the market and began a complete overhaul of our processes. That including cutting ties with some suppliers, bringing in stricter audits, investing in more staff training, and improving our allergen traceability systems. We've also made it a priority to talk about what's happened so that others can learn and avoid the same mistakes.
I mean, Desi houses, South Asian households are notorious, obviously, for using a lot of spices. I mean, just one dish alone can have God knows how many different spices in it. I mean, what should families be looking out for when it comes to buying ingredients, especially things like masalas or spice blends that include numerous ingredients?
That's a great question. Many spices aren't clearly labelled for allergens, or they're sold in bulk without proper packaging. I always recommend looking for a certified producer with clear labelling and traceability, especially if you or someone in your family has an allergy. Avoid unlabeled products or anything that doesn't list potential allergen risks, and ask your local grocer or supplier where the product comes from. It's okay to ask, it's okay to question it.
Are businesses in the food sector doing enough to prevent issues around allergies?
Some are, but many aren't. That's the problem. You know, we need to move beyond basic compliance and take real accountability. Food safety can't be reactive. It has to be proactive. That means investing in prevention, transparency, and education at every level of the supply chain. It's the only way to rebuild consumer trust.
I mean, obviously, the amount of people that are now eating out, and by eating out, that includes, you know, kind of getting takeaways and ordering in.
Yeah.
That number's gone through the roof with things like, you know, your Just Eats and your Uber Eats and all of that kind of stuff. The various apps that bring food to you. So the amount of people that are now ordering food, eating food that is not prepared by themselves has gone through the roof. So what advice would you give to those small businesses, those takeaways, that are catering to the audience and trying to manage allergy risks, because obviously for them now business has gone up, more people are eating their food, so they need to be thinking about what they need to do to mitigate these kind of allergy issues. So what should they be doing?
I would say start with training, make sure everyone handling food understands the allergen risks. Secondly, double down your checks on your supply chain. Know what's in your ingredients and ask for an allergen statement from your suppliers. And lastly, be honest with your customers. Clear communication saves lives. If you're unsure, it's better to say so than take a risk.
Allergy Awareness Week is just around the corner. What's your message to the food industry as a whole? If you could kind of get one message out there this evening, what would that be?
Well, my message is simple. Prevention is better than cure. Allergies don't discriminate. They affect every community. We, as an industry, have a duty to be vigilant, transparent, and compassionate. Let's not wait for another crisis to take action. Together, we can save lives and protect the public.
Indeed. Jatin Patel, the head of operations at FGS Ingredients, which is a family-owned British food manufacturer who's been supplying seasonings across the UK for over 50 years. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Jatin. It's been eye-opening. Thank you.
Thank you, Raees.
Now, if you've just tuned in, you are listening to me, Fazana Chowdhury, sitting in for Amir. Now, according to the most recent European Health Interview Survey, allergies affect about 30% of men and 36% of women. Now, in total, 20 million people in the UK suffer from allergies, with 5 million requiring specialist care for really severe conditions. Now, there's a call for clearer labelling and safety information on many food products. Now, Jatin Patel joins me, who is head of operations at FGS Ingredients, a family-owned British food manufacturer who've been supplying seasonings across the UK for over 50 years. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening, Fazana. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for joining us. It's such an important topic. Now, can you explain why allergy and safety in food manufacturing is at such a critical issue at this moment in time? I mean, I was really surprised that 20 million people suffer from allergies.
Well, like you said, allergies are on the rise. And as you mentioned, over 20 million people in the UK live with some form of allergy. And for many, it can be life-threatening. That's a huge number, and yet allergen risks are still underestimated in food production.
Yeah.
A simple mistake in labelling or cross-contamination can lead to a serious health emergency.
Yeah.
That's why it's not just about ticking boxes. Food safety has to be built into the culture of every company.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Now, last November, your company, FGS, was involved in a recall of several products containing mustard powder because there was undeclared peanuts, kind of in that formulation. Yeah. I mean, that recall must have been enormously difficult. Tell the listeners who maybe, have never been involved with a recall, just the expense and just the pain and just how long it takes to carry out an effective recall.
Well, it was very tough, but we acted fast and took full responsibility. We withdrew the products from the market and began a complete overhaul of our processes. Mm-hmm. At FGS, that included cutting ties with some suppliers, bringing in stricter audits, investing in more staff training, and improving our allergen traceability systems. We also made it a priority to talk about what happened, so then others can learn and avoid the same mistakes we made.
Yeah. And you know what, Jatin, I was just going to say that. I mean, you've really put an effective CAPA, the corrective action, preventative action. But I think the key learning here is, you're being really vocal about this and you're actually sharing the experience and just the importance of the awareness, which I think is incredibly important. You speak there about supply chain. That's really difficult to kind of get right and just have that visibility of that supply chain from start to end, because quite often you've got brokers who are kind of like dealing in between, etc. So that is also one of the key paramount things, isn't it? Just having that visibility.
Of course it is. It's extremely important to have that visibility with your suppliers, with the farms, where the product's coming from, looking at crop cycles, crop rotation.
Yeah. And also pesticides, kind of use of pesticides, because that's a big thing now as well. Now, look, many South Asian households, we love our spices. We use tons of spices. What should families be on the lookout for when buying ingredients, like either the raw kind of ingredients themselves, that, they may grind up to make, specific masala blend themselves. What should we be on the lookout for?
That's really a great question. Many spice mixes aren't clearly labeled for allergens, or they're sold in bulk without proper packaging. I always recommend looking for certified producers with clear labeling and traceability, especially if you or someone in your family has an allergy. Yeah. Avoid unlabeled products or anything that doesn't list potential allergen risks.
Yeah.
Ask your local grocer or supplier, where does the product come from? And it's okay to ask questions,
I think that's really important. Ask them, because they're purchasing the product. So they should have that traceability and they should be able to answer questions. I'm going to ask you a slightly contentious question. So I, a really good friend of mine, her son has a really serious peanut allergy. And she's of South Asian heritage background. And she says she really struggles with going to things like weddings, celebrations, because of what he can eat and what he can't eat. And, quite often the hosts, do we really take the allergy really seriously?
I think in the food industry or FGS, we definitely take any allergy, extremely seriously. We're testing all the products, and since this recall for, all allergens to make sure they're compliant, and we don't have to put a "this may contain" on the packaging, on the label.
Yeah.
Prior to there, we were doing risk assessments on products, quantifying the risk, and then testing from there going forward. But it's very difficult, because a lot of the packaging, if you look in the ethnic stores, they have "this may contain" of every single allergen on the back of their packaging, and to cover themselves, which is understandable, but that doesn't help the people that have allergies.
Of course it doesn't. And the caterers also, they should maybe, they print out a lovely menu which goes on the tables. Maybe they should be a bit more transparent and a bit clearer as well, about potential allergies, potential contaminants, that may be there in the masala blends. It's brilliant to see what you're doing at FGS. You've really owned what happened to you, that, painful recall that you had to do. You're making sure you're being incredibly vocal about it. But in general, do you think enough businesses in the food sector, and I guess unless it's happened to you, unless you've been through it, are they doing enough to prevent kind of issues like this and just raising that awareness, which is so important?
Well, some are, but many aren't. That's the problem. We need to move beyond basic compliance and take real accountability. Food safety can't be reactive. It has to be proactive. That means investing in prevention, transparency, and education at every level of the supply chain. It's the only way to rebuild consumer trust.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of small businesses and takeaways, who are maybe just trying to grapple and manage kind of allergy risks as well, what advice would you give to them? I guess it is really for them to be aware of their supply chain and the ingredients that they're using.
Yes, definitely. I would start with training. Make sure everyone handling food understands the allergen risks. Secondly, double check your supply chain. Know what's in your ingredients and ask for the allergen statements from your suppliers.
Yeah.
And lastly, be honest with your customers. Clear communication saves lives. If you're unsure, it's better to say so than take a risk.
Yeah, no, I love that. Look, I've been making notes. You're saying training, it first of all begins with training and just making sure that folk are aware of kind of, allergens and just that risk there as well. And then just double checking that supply chain as well, getting things like allergy certificates from your suppliers as well. That is not an unreasonable question. They should be having, allergy certificates as well. And then, just being really honest as well with the consumer. So, I think you've mentioned some really, really, really good good points there as well. Now, Allergy Awareness Week is coming up soon. Is there anything that your company FGS are doing, and also what would be your message to the food industry?
Well, my message is simple: prevention is better than cure. Allergies don't discriminate. They affect every community. We, as an industry, have a duty to be vigilant, transparent, and compassionate. Let's not wait for another crisis to take action. Together, we save lives and protect the public.
Yeah, no, I think that's, prevention. Like you said, prevention is better than cure. And you know what, lastly, I just wanted to ask, in terms of, there's a lot of things that we import in terms of spices and blends. We've all seen them at the Indian greengrocers. I have to say, I'm one of these people who just loves to wander around for ages and ages, just looking at all of these packets thinking, what on earth do you use that for? So there's always something new there, isn't there? How many of those kind of raw materials coming in are actually tested by kind of like, like the food authority? Is it a small percentage? Because they can't test every single batch coming in, can they?
No. The port authority, before it arrived, have increased the number of checks and the number of tests they're doing. But still, the onus, is on the importer as well as the supplier from origin, to make sure they're carrying out the relevant tests and it's compliant. And to be honest, like us at FGS, we spend a lot of money on testing, and that is just to make sure the product is safe, for consumption in the UK. No. Jatin, thank you so much. I think this has been incredibly informative as well. Lots of things for us to think about as well. And look, out of something terrible that happened to your company, a recall, which is so painful, well done for just kind of stepping it up and also just raising awareness. I think that's incredibly important, what you're doing. So, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you so much.
You take care. Thanks. Thanks, Jatin. Wow, that was incredibly interesting, wasn't it? Lots of take-home messages there. Double check the ingredients. Ask the greengrocer that you are purchasing those ingredients from. Do they know what their supply chain is? Do they know the name of the company that they're getting those ingredients from as well? And I think the key message there was, you can't test every single batch, and prevention is most definitely better than cure.